that. And County Executive Stenger is a Democrat, Holly is a Republican. This is something which there is consensus on. And I think one of the individuals who can best show some of that consensus is Dr. Randall Williams. He is the director of the Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services, came here from North Carolina, where a state health director, and he could probably explain it better, but he used his medical license through legislation to allow Narcan to be available throughout the state. And it was passed not by a majority, not by a supermajority, but was it not? I think it was passed unanimously, which just, you don't hear happening. He's an obstetrician, OBGYN. He's delivered, over 30 years delivered, I'm sure thousands of new lives coming to this world. But through his Narcan program, he prevented lives from prematurely departing this world. And I think we're very fortunate to have him here in Missouri working with us. Dr. Randall Williams.
I'm going to use this as well, if I could. Can you hear me? Again, you're very gracious to have the Governor Bright and myself very much appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. When I got confirmed by the Senate and when I spoke with the governor, about the very second sentence I ever told him was that I thought as a physician it was incredibly important to go around the state taking a history. So I have been to all 114 counties and St. Louis in my first 8 months doing just that. And the opioid crisis is our #1 public health crisis. And we have great challenges here in Missouri. But the thing I always tell people, we have just incredible human capital. And we have a tremendous example of that today in Larry Lewis. So I don't invoke this often, but I'm the only person other than law enforcement in Missouri who can hold you against your will by quarantining you. And I don't want to do that. It's a lot of paperwork. It'll take me the rest of the day. But I would like you to join me in a standing ovation for Larry for his 38 years of taking care of patients. Thank you. I see a lot of young faces. Y'all all think you're going to retire in 20 years, I know. But Larry, I was thinking today, the number to the ER back in North Carolina is still ingrained in my head. I could go dial it right now and get the charge nurse in 5 minutes. I cannot tell you, I started working in hospitals when I was 14 and started working in ERs when I was 18, and just have a tremendous amount of respect for my ER colleagues. They have a very, very difficult job. I tell people, if you really want to see what's going on, the governor and I went to the morgue here in St. Louis City with Michael Graham and watched an autopsy. I'm pretty sure Governor Greitens is the only governor who's watched an autopsy this year. To show him, I think if you want to know what's going on in society as far as our pathology, you go to the medical examiner, you go to the ER. And the emergency rooms in the United States, and especially here in Missouri, have become kind of the catch-all for whether it's behavioral health or opioid overdoses or lack of access to doctors. These guys on the front line see it every day. And so I heard you publicly, and I think it's on tape, that you said you were still willing to engage in public policy. So the governor and I are going to take you up on that. So don't be heading to Miami yet in your retirement or whatever you had planned to do. I want to take a minute and talk about the opioid crisis in Missouri. Again, it is the #1 public health crisis in the United States. It is the #1 issue that we face in Missouri. Every member of the governor's cabinet and the governor have read Dreamland by Sam Kianonis. That's your homework. If you're under 70, that's your homework to read that book. It's an excellent book describing about how we got to where we are today. So if you want to know what the governor's reading and what we're reading, it's that. And so we are very purposeful about how we are going to approach this problem in Missouri. The first thing that we're doing that's innovative is it is an entire cabinet-wide effort. We've just hired, starts Thursday, an opioid project manager that will coordinate all cabinet level. And just as you've seen the St. Louis, the Highway Patrol come into the streets of highways of St. Louis to patrol the highways to free up law enforcement to fight drugs in St. Louis and St. Louis County. We're going to be doing the same thing with the entire cabinet. It's an incredibly integrated and coordinated approach. The second thing we did on July 17th, the governor signed an executive order so that we will start a statewide PDMP that will give us an amazing ability to identify those providers and those dispensers who are abusing, misusing, and diverting drugs that perpetuate this crisis. We are very excited about that. I'll be at Duke next week giving 2 talks on that. Then I'm in Washington and Harvard giving talks about that. Because as we talk to the Surgeon General, Jerome Adams, and Brenda Fitzgerald, who's an obstetrician and a friend of mine, and I'll be with her, they see the incredible capability of these PDMPs using this technology. You can literally go out right now. If you look at what we are tasked with, we have 1, maybe 2 people who get up every day and are charged with figuring out what 20,000 doctors are doing, a couple thousand dentists, a couple thousand nurse practitioners, and 1,400 pharmacies, okay? 2 people. And so they basically get up and just rely on tips. But where we're headed is, and I've seen it, so this is not theoretical, not far from here with our PBMs, and we have 3 major ones here in Missouri, you were able to, within about 5 minutes, as we were talking about, identify the top 200 doctors who are writing 70 prescriptions to 2 patients who go to 30 other doctors and then go to 30 pharmacies throughout Missouri. So what you did that day in the ER in about 3 or 4 weeks, I'm going to be able to do for the whole state of Missouri. So we will do that. Now, people say, well, what about voluntary PDMPs, such as Steve talked about and Representative Rader has been so passionate about? We fully support those. And we think that these are 2 paths. These are different tools in our toolkit to confront the opioid crisis. I think as Shannon said, it will take many things to do that. But we think that these at some point will converge nationally, not just here in Missouri, where doctors, right now we know with our voluntary PDMPs, which the CDC does not recommend because doctors don't use them. Nationally, in North Carolina, where I came from, we had a PDMP, 8 years, I used it. What percentage of doctors in North Carolina do you think used it voluntarily? Anybody want to guess? After 8 years? 23%. So doctors historically don't use voluntary PDMPs. That's not the voluntary PDMP's fault. That is that doctors are right now just overburdened. 54% of all doctors in the United States are burnt out. I learned last night for ER doctors that's even higher. So if I was a young person, we kid in North Carolina, we had 7,000 applications this year for 180 spots in our med school. And we started a class in the first semester on burnout. So I said, why not just send a letter to the 180 got in, say, we're so sorry to inform you you've been accepted to medical school. You have a 50% chance in your life of being miserable. And send a letter to the other 6,800 going, congratulations, you didn't get in. Go do something you really enjoy. And so we are clearly cognizant that when you talk to these ER doctors, as I did last night, and Sam Alexander, who I talked to, he started his shift this morning at 5 o'clock in Springfield, that we have to arrive at a place where doctors do what they go to medical school to do, which is what I got great joy for 30 years, and that's taking care of patients and not being burdened by kind of cumbersome regulatory or EMR things. So we have to make it more efficient. But again, on behalf of the governor, we just incredibly appreciate Larry's career here. We appreciate his colleagues. I think the greatest honor you can get, people get honors all the time, but I think the greatest one you can get is from your peers, people who've worked with you for 38 years, who recognize who you really are. So we are just incredibly excited to be part of this inaugural event. We're going to take you up. We're not going to let that go to waste. There's a lot of wisdom and experience in those 38 years, and we would love for you to shift that into public policy. So last thing, I'm going to give you my phone number. I always do this. An old country doctor told me in North Carolina when I started medical school, the summer before I started medical school, I would be judged on 3 things as a doctor for the rest of my life. The first one would be my availability, the second one would be my affability, and the third one would be my ability. And I was kind of, I just got to medical school, I was feeling pretty good. I said, wait a minute, if I'm really smart and I'm really nice, everybody's going to love me. He said, well, those 2 things don't do you any good if you're not available to people. So my number is 919-413-7791. And that's my cell. You're welcome to call me anytime. I'm usually on the road, driving somewhere. You'll keep me awake. Now, don't do me like the lady in St. Louis County, who is the nicest person on the planet in St. Louis County. I did this at a forum with one of the senators here, and she calls me every week, and she says, "Randall, how you doing?" I said, "I'm doing great." She said, "Where are you going today?" "Oh, I'm going to St. Louis." She said, "Oh, good, you'll be nearby." She said, "Did you get enough sleep last night?" "Yeah, I got lots of sleep." "Do you have your seatbelt?" "Yes, ma'am, I'm director of health. I got my seatbelt on." She goes, "Dr. Williams, they didn't pick up my garbage today." And I go, "They didn't pick up your garbage?" She said, "You said call if I could help you in any way." I said, "Ma'am, I did say those exact words." So if you have a problem with your garbage pickup, that's not what I usually do, but call me. And if you're the second nicest person in Missouri, I'll probably help you. So thank you.